I can't get it on the floor. Hello, my name's Corentin, I'm the pastry chef at Butter, and I'm going to show you how I make my potato rosti. My favourite potato to use would be a Yukon Gold or a russet potato, but they're quite hard to find at the supermarket. The closest description I can usually get is agria, yellow potato, or white potato. So use yellow potatoes because they'll fry up the best. White potatoes are better for boiling and mashing. So the only specialty piece of equipment you're going to need for this is a mandolin, but you can cut them by hand. Just cut slices as thin as you possibly can. I'm going to show you how I get them as even as I can with the mandolin. So the trick is to slice the potato about 2 millimeters thick, and we're going to create stacks and then go through with the knife to get a really thin julienne. If you are cutting the potato by hand, just make sure that you cut a little flat surface for yourself. Say, pretend this potato isn't cut. I would cut off the bottom of it so that there's a flat surface to hold onto, so that when you do slice, you can actually do it without the potato moving around. Obviously you want quite a sharp knife too. So I'm just going to stack the slices so that we can shoot the end of them. I actually don't use potatoes a lot at home. I think because I eat too many fries in the kitchen I work in. But I do like to use nice potatoes when I find them, and I'll usually make this recipe. I don't often do mashed potatoes and things like that. I just think I eat too many chips to make potatoes at home. This recipe is, it's quite decadent. There's a lot of butter, as you're going to see later, which obviously I'm quite fond of. I can whip it up minimal effort, and it's a really easy, simple, light dinner to have if I want a little bit of carbohydrate from the rosti, and I'll just serve it with a green salad and that's it. So potatoes oxidize. As soon as you cut into them, they'll start to turn grey and get a bit of a bitter taste. So when I'm working with potatoes, I've got cold water nearby. I'm just going to slice these through relatively quickly and chuck them in the water as I go so that they don't turn grey. A hash brown usually has eggs and flour to hold it together, and it has a bit more of a cakey texture because of that. This just has crispy potato on the outside, basically fried in butter, and a soft, mashy, pillowy kind of inside, which I really like the contrast of. So I'm cutting these as thin as I can, and when the stack starts to get a little bit too slippery, rather than risking it, I'll just slip the stack down and keep cutting the last couple of potatoes as I go. I see a lot of people work with knives quite dangerously in the kitchens I work in, and it stresses me out. The secret to working with a knife is always to have a stable surface. So I've actually secured this with a damp tea towel. The second thing is to make sure that obviously what you're cutting is stable. So if it's slippery, if you're cutting a capsicum or something round that's going to roll around, cut it in half first, create a flat surface so that when you're holding onto it, it doesn't move around. That way you're not going to cut your fingers. And the last tip is always keep your fingertips in, and I use my knuckles as a guide when I'm cutting. So the knife is touching the knuckles, but as long as I keep it down near the potato, there's no way I'm going to cut my fingers on it. So the potatoes are chopped. I'm just going to rinse a little bit of starch off them by running them under some cold water. So all of that cloudiness is starch, and this isn't like sushi rice, we don't have to wash all of the starch off. I'm just trying to get a majority of it off. If we leave the starch on there, it'll turn this into a bit of a glue and it'll stick together. So now that I've rinsed off most of the starch, I'm just going to dry them out on a clean tea towel so that they don't steam in the oven, they'll just fry into the butter. One big one or two small ones, and it depends on the size of your frying pan. So my frying pan is about 24 centimeters, so I'll just make one big one. If you have a little 20 centimeter non-stick pan, then just make 2 of them. And I do this a couple of times just to get most of the water off. You can see how much they've dried already. Obviously use a clean tea towel. It's another thing, you can do it with paper towels, but it avoids throwing away disposable stuff. So I'm just melting some butter while the potatoes are drying on the tea towel, and we're going to add it to the potatoes, and then we're going to use this pan to cook the rosti in. I've melted the butter, the potatoes are cut and dried, and I've got a little bit of salt to go with them. Actually quite a bit of salt, because potatoes and butter only have a certain amount of flavour, but the salt really brings it out. So we're just going to transfer these back into the bowl they came from. And I've used the same pan I'm going to use to make the rosti to melt the butter. That way we're kind of pre-seasoning it, I suppose. The butter. Now if your skillet is small, say about 20 centimetres or less, use half of the mix to make this now, and you can actually keep half of these potatoes in a container in the fridge if you want to make them the next day into another rosti. The butter on them does mean that they're not going to oxidize as much as they normally would, so they will hold a night. That's it, it's ready to fry. So we've cut the potatoes, we've washed them, we've rinsed them, we've dried them, and we've put some melted butter through them and some salt. And so now I'm just heating a little bit of oil and the residual butter that we melted in a pan. I actually want it to get quite hot, and that's because when I put the potatoes in there, I want it to sear straight away and create a layer of cooked potato so that it doesn't stick to the pan. I know it looks like a long process, but actually once you've done it a few times, it's a pretty easy recipe to just get in the oven, and then that's dinner sorted. Just serve it with a bit of salad. So my oil's pretty hot, and I'm just going to start gently placing this in. That sizzle's a good sign, and just give it a bit of a shake just so it doesn't stick. It does cook down a lot, so I like to pack quite a decent amount in there. I'm actually going to use not all of this, but I'll fry the rest off and make a mini rosti for breakfast or something tomorrow. So now that it's in there, I'm just going to let that cook for about 5 or 10 minutes until I can shake it around and I can see that it's one unit and it's glued together, and that the bottom's a little bit golden. And then we're going to put it in the oven and finish it off. So this has been cooking for about 5 minutes, and the bottom's golden and crispy, and I can tell that it's ready to bake. So I'm just going to put it in the oven for about 20 minutes until the top's crispy too. Awesome, the rosti's been baking for about 20 minutes and it looks slightly crispy on top, which is perfect, and crispy around the edges. So, I mean, if I was not on camera, I'd probably just flip it, and if it didn't work, I would just move it around with a fork. But the easiest way to flip it's actually just straight onto a board. And then now that you've got that nice crispy surface, slide it back into the pan. And if this happens, just squish it down a bit. It always happens. There you go. Back in the oven for another 10 minutes. Awesome. So I tried to flip it, and because my skillet isn't non-stick, it stuck a little bit. But honestly, I think that's quite good. It's got some really good crispiness to it. The inside's really soft and fluffy. It's not going to look perfect every time, but it's going to taste delicious. The best way for me to eat this, I like to slice it into portions, serve it with a bit of creme fraiche and some chives. And I always serve it with a green salad just to lighten it up. And it's an easy, quick, light dinner. It's crispy. A little bit of creme fraiche just to give it a bit of lightness. Some salt. Done. Well, we made all this effort to make a Rosti, so I'm going to eat it. I can't get it on the floor. All right. It's so crispy on the outside, but the inside's almost like mashed potato. It's beautiful, and the creme fraiche really does it for me because it adds a really nice layer of freshness onto this basically fried potato. I'm really happy. Yum. If you want a new way to make some potatoes, this is the way to do it. Give it a go and let us know how you went.